Royal Enfield provided us both the Continental GT 650 and the Interceptor 650 for a full 300km road test. We tested the motorcycle on highways where we did some top speed runs on the straights, dodged traffic, and finally put it through some challenging corners to test out the motorcycle. Welcome to the Royal Enfield Continental GT 650 review. We will upload the Interceptor 650 review separately, so please subscribe. If you're not aware of the specs, the Royal Enfield Continental GT comes with a 648cc parallel twin engine with a 47 horsepower and 52 Newton meters of torque. The engine has a balancer shaft and a 270-degree crank for smooth and refined performance. The tires are relatively thinner and they've still gone with the 18-inch wheel for the full retro look with spoke wheels, so no tubeless tires for you guys. The seat height on the Continental GT 650 is lesser than 800mm, which should be good for shorter riders. But that's enough about the specs, because the question everyone wants to know is the mileage. And this motorcycle delivers 22 kilometers on normal usage, and we did our own mileage test, and I'll show you that result while we're doing the video. So let's just not waste any more time and jump right into the ride discussion, and we'll conclude it afterwards. Early morning on the Royal Enfield Continental GT 650, doing some very narrow alleyways. Today is gonna be a full road test, so not gonna go right off the bat and conclude about the bike. But I have ridden it yesterday for 15 kilometers, and I've ridden the Interceptor before, that's ahead. So taking the Continental GT over some bad roads. This is important because this is a clip-on motorcycle handlebars, and these type of motorcycles usually struggle off-road, but with the Interceptor's softer front suspension, it is more manageable than any other clip-on motorcycle or cafe racer motorcycle that I've used. Now the Interceptor's ahead, I'm sure he's having a better time than me, but even in this small bad patch of road, I see that the Continental GT, I mean, it is harder on the wrist obviously because of the lower position, but it is quite manageable. The tank cap actually comes off completely. We have set the trip meter to 0, and when it hits reserve again, we'll check the trip meter. We'll let you know our mileage. It may not be accurate because we always pull hard, but at least you'll know what kind of mileage you expect when you're pulling hard on highways. Today is not a city test, so this is not an overall mileage figure. This is just the highway riding hard figure. So yeah, the early this bike kind of tops out at 7,500 RPM plus, and that's I'm not a big fan of that, but I guess they did that to, you know, kind of limit the vibrations, so also to keep the bike more refined and that refined feel. But I think if they could work on the refinement and open up the higher RPMs, then this engine is capable of much higher speeds and much better performance. I think even better acceleration. And the Interceptor and the Continental GT both have a ground clearance of 174 millimeters. So I think even with a pillion, these large speed breakers shouldn't be that much of a problem. But time for some cornering. I'm not cornered on the Interceptor yet, but this bike, you know, I would say mid corner stability is really good. Corner entry is a bit different than I'm used to. Let's talk a bit about the ergonomics. You are obviously leaned slightly forward, but if you've ridden some aggressive naked bike riding postures, it's not much different than that. One thing to notice is the foot pegs. They are not at all rear set, so that makes the bike more comfortable. It is probably the most comfortable riding position that I've ridden on a clip-on motorcycle. not for the Interceptor, let's not compare it to that directly, but if you're thinking about taking this bike on a weekend tour like 400 kilometers, it is pretty much manageable. And I think I was expecting it to be more aggressive, but it's not. Even the 535cc Continental GT, the one which came out a few years ago, it had a more committed riding position. This one's more manageable, this one's way more comfortable. So on one hand, it's giving you that retro styling and that, you know, cafe racer look, but it is not compromising much on comfort. So yeah, this bike is livable in the city, obviously, and pretty easy to do in the highways as well for a short tour. The problem is that because of the 200 plus kgs of curb weight, this bike is a little hard to handle in the U-turns, or you know, it feels sluggish even in the slower speed in the city when you're even lifting it out of the side stand. That is one of the negatives, because on the Interceptor you don't really feel the weight. On this one you kind of do, but still very, very usable and livable motorcycle in the city. Now let's talk a little bit about the flickability. Yes, this is the more fun of the twins, and handling is quite easy, quite flickable, and there at least you don't feel the weight. You know, you pick up to about 40-50 kilometers per hour, and then the bike becomes really, really agile. Let's put this bike through the paces. It's probably not the best stretch to do that, but right now we'll be trying to get a feel of the motorcycle, and the only way I can do that is to push it. I keep hitting the limiter on this bike. If you're doing 100 and the bike has no vibrations, and by no vibration I mean no vibration that irritates you. Any motorcycle that has an engine is vibrating, and like that's the thing of IC engines. I haven't ridden much on electrics yet. On the lower RPMs you feel a slight buzz on this bike, the Continental GT 650, since it's putting in a lot more feedback with the lower clip on handlebars. But the other motorcycle, not at all. The Interceptor is even more refined in its feel because of those wider and higher handlebars. Let me know in the comment section below which motorcycle you like, the Interceptor or this one, the Continental GT, and why. So testing out the top end of the Continental GT 650, I think I saw over 140 kilometers per hour on the speedo, and I think the biggest takeaway is the motorcycle is extremely stable at high speeds, so it can actually maintain those speeds as long as the chassis, the chassis is kind of a new frame for Royal Enfield. Everything on this motorcycle is new. They have developed the 6-speed gearbox first time. They've never used a 6-speed gearbox before, and the frame that they developed in conjunction with Tyres Performance Design, it's a tubular twin cradle steel frame. What that means for our simple road test terminology is the bike feels stiffer than any other Royal Enfield that I've ridden, and that's a good thing for the handling. By the way, apart from the clip-ons, there's not much different between these two bikes. Yes, this has a smaller and a redesigned shape in the fuel tank, which is 12.5 liters, and up ahead on the Interceptor it's 13.7, so that's a little bit of a difference. But apart from that, these motorcycles are quite identical, and if you ask me, I probably would have done a few things differently on the Cafe Racer. Tried to push for a little bit more weight saving. This is only 4 kgs lighter, and some of it is, I believe, coming from the fuel. So maybe more weight savings on this motorcycle would have made this even more enjoyable, maybe improved the handling. The longer wheelbase, this bike has a 1400 millimeters of wheelbase, which can be attributed to having this stability. Previous generation of Royal Enfields, chuck that out of the window. This feels in no way connected to those bikes. Frames new, suspension is new, even the new gearbox, obviously the new engine. And what they have done is they've made a motorcycle that is in no way similar to anything that they've built before. And the brakes, I mean, if you're slowing down from 120 or so, these brakes are phenomenal and they're good enough. I mean, they're not going to be, you're not going to need better brakes. But yeah, if you are that kind of a guy who wants to push this motorcycle to its absolute limits, like the top end 150 plus, then you know, a single brake, and especially in panic braking situations, the front single disc might be a little bit too less for you. The initial bite is not there, but it has such good progressive feel. And you know, after the initial bite, which is not there, the progressive feel is very strong and it slows down the bike without any drama. And the front end dive, when you brake hard, it is there, but it is controlled. Now try to do the absolute top speed, and we reached about 165 kilometers per hour. I believe we can go further. Right at the top speed, I mean, after you cross 150, the bike loses its composure. As I had said before, that is predictable, because they're the 130 section tire, you know. For higher speeds, you definitely are missing that wider tread tire. So yeah, the bike can do 170, I believe. We went about 165 or something like that. There's slight loss in the stability. I'm probably nitpicking a bit too much, but there are situations on Indian highways where you need to really drop your speed quickly, and in those situations sometimes you wish you had more braking power. But for all practical usage, 120 km per hour cruising, and even when you're panic braking from 120, I believe these brakes will be sufficient in most of the cases. See how good I can hold the line even close to the traffic. I am having that much confidence. So that I may not know about the Interceptor, but the GT, the rear end is wobbling out a bit. It's kind of funny how it handles there, but it is doing everything in a reasonable amount of control. I showed you how good the bike is in the mid corner stability and even in the out of the corner acceleration. But if you have to nitpick somewhere, there is a bit of something that is lacking in the corner entry, because that's when the softer front suspension is kind of diving in. But I get it, because that's going to give this bike the comfortable feel that it has despite having clip-ons. Round 2 with much more confidence. Yeah, this is hooking into the line pretty well. Then out of the corner, much better this time. I can assure you guys, this bike can do much better after a few hot laps, because the way this is feeling right now is absolutely phenomenal. Bad entry. Whoa, the brakes. I pushed a bit too hard on the corner exit, and you know, that's the thing I was talking about in the handling. You when I was braking, the bike lost composure. So that's one of the things that I've been seeing in the frame. It is good, but there are, when you push it too hard, it just reacts in a different way. On a normal naked bike, that trail braking thing I was doing to course correction, that course correction is easily possible on a standard naked bike that we do, but not here. The foremost issue that I faced was the abrupt limiter kick-in at a very low 7,500 RPM. The engine is capable of more, and Royal Enfield has limited it mainly because the bike loses stability at higher speeds, and even in other gear I kept hitting the limiter, and I think that's a little bit annoying. The motorcycle loses stability after 150 km per hour. The rear end wobbles and wavers, and it's not the safest of feeling. However, up to 140 km per hour, the bike is reasonably stable, and for most people, this shouldn't be a great deal. Mid-corner course correction is risky, and slight braking during the turn destabilizes the motorcycle, which could be due to the suspension. I feel I am nitpicking now, but it's something that I haven't felt on other naked bikes, so I thought I'd mention it in passing. I am not a fan of the relatively thinner 130 rear section tire. It does fine on corners, but on high speed stability is compromised, and on bad roads or even on wet roads, I prefer having a wider tire, especially on such a big displacement motorcycle. Finally, this is not a demerit, but I personally would have wanted the Cafe Racer to be a bit more different than the Interceptor. Maybe a different gearing ratio, 17-inch alloy wheels for more weight saving and better handling, along with a wider rear tire. Even the current motorcycle's handling is extremely good. I would have preferred those little changes. However, I am very impressed with the handling. The Cafe Racer version has a lower seat height due to lesser cushioning, and that may be good for shorter riders, but it was causing saddle sore after 50 kilometers of riding. The Interceptor seat, however, is extremely comfortable, so you can either switch to that seat or you can just add a gel seat. In conclusion, I can say after riding almost 150 kilometers on the Continental GT, I am really impressed. The bike turned out to be far more comfortable and livable as an everyday motorcycle. I know a lot of people loved the styling, but I personally loved how well it performed in the corners. Whereas I consider the Interceptor as the perfect do-it-all motorcycle, I found the Continental GT to be the perfect second motorcycle, or for people who commute by cars and picking up a motorcycle to have fun on the weekends, the Royal Enfield Continental GT could be the perfect motorcycle. Thanks for watching, and I hope you like this review. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on that bell icon, because that is most important for us smaller YouTubers right now. I'm working very hard to get to 100k, so share this video and hope this video has been helpful. See you on my next video. Goodbye.